Hi, I'm John, and we are here together from Christ Church for part 4 of 6 in our series about mountains in the Bible. Today's talk involves Mount Carmel and Mount Horeb. The story is found in 1 Kings chapters 18 and 19. The main people in the story are Elijah the prophet, Ahab the king, and Jezebel the queen, the wicked queen. The time is 850 years before Christ and about 600 years after Moses climbed Mount Sinai seeking for guidance from God. In other words, on a timeline, we're about halfway between Moses and Jesus. Let me tell you something about Mount Horeb. Actually, you might remember from Exodus chapter 3 that Moses first met God at a burning bush. He was on Mount Horeb in the Sinai wilderness. Moses' first encounter with God came when he was working as a shepherd in the wilderness. God spoke to him and gave him a job to do and a purpose for living. Now, most scholars believe that Mount Sinai, where Moses received the 10 Commandments, was in the same mountain wilderness where Moses saw the burning bush. Yes, Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, and Mount Sinai, the mountain of God, are probably two names, Horeb, Sinai, two names for the same place. 600 years after Moses, God is going to do something special again in this same sacred place. Now, Mount Carmel, our second mountain for today, it's a mountain that's taller than Horeb. It's located almost overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. If you looked at a map, it's almost straight west, a little bit south of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus spent much of his life. It's actually on the northern end of Israel, up near the border with Lebanon. Now, Queen Jezebel, the wicked queen, came from Lebanon. She was a princess married to Ahab, the king of Israel, who was trying to strengthen his small but thriving empire in that region. Ahab's father had been a powerful king with a lot of economic success. Ahab had inherited wealth, power, prestige, and an important princess. He will reign for 22 years with lots of material success, but with one major problem. His wife, Jezebel, hates the prophets of the God of Israel. She worships the god Baal. Baal is a warrior god of lightning and rain, fertility, and storms. Most gods could coexist in the ancient world. People had different gods for different purposes. But the God of Israel had made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, and Ahab. The agreement or covenant was God's guidance, provision, and protection in exchange for the people's commitment, both in private and in public. 1 Kings 18 and 19 tells an incredible story, probably recorded by the prophet Jeremiah. He's also in your Old Testament right next to Isaiah. Now, the book of Kings really could use some explaining to help with the context and the significance, but not right now. And I also don't want to give spoilers for the story. I want you to go and read the story for yourself, preferably out loud, to yourself or to someone else. The story of Elijah's challenge to King Ahab is one of the most dramatic events in the entire history of Israel. Elijah becomes a living legend and a wanted man. He goes up against the king of Israel. He calls out the prophets of Baal, 850 of them, and he lays down a challenge. He says, "We will take turns calling on our God. Let the real God answer with fire." Now remember that Baal is pretty famous throughout that whole region, and he's known as the god of lightning and storms. Whoever loses dies. 850 against 1. Well, I can't say more about that. I want you to read the story. But clearly, Elijah survives. Queen Jezebel is furious. She swears an oath in 1 Kings chapter 19 to kill Elijah. She is so mad. He runs for his life. More than 600 kilometers all the way from Mount Carmel to Jezreel, and then south to the south of Israel and beyond, all the way to, you guessed it, Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb. Now, running down there, almost there, he runs out of energy. He is completely exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The text says that Elijah literally lies down under a broom bush that's about 3 meters high, typical in the region, and he prays for death. Now, the story doesn't end with death. Instead, there's a fascinating moment of restoration. An angel of God, a messenger, appears and wakes him from his dying sleep or coma, telling him to eat, rest, and eat some more. He finds food and drink. The scene repeats, and he finds that his strength is restored. Strengthened by that food, he travels another 40 days and 40 nights, a biblical term for a long time, until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God, far out in the Sinai wilderness. He was seeking for refuge and guidance. Perhaps he hoped for the power to face Queen Jezebel, maybe the same power that God had just recently displayed at Mount Carmel. Now remember, Elijah will be remembered for the rest of history. In fact, when Jesus went into the desert for a long month of fasting, testing, and later emerged with extraordinary wisdom and power, the people never confused him with Abraham, Joseph, King David, Solomon, but they did think that he might be Elijah come back from the dead. No one else, but maybe John the Baptist, ever had gone into the desert and emerged with such spiritual wisdom and power. So many years ago, God had met Moses on Mount Sinai with great power. There was thunder and lightning. There was smoke and fire. The ground trembled as with an earthquake. Just recently, Elijah had experienced the most significant day and event of his life at Mount Carmel when he asked God for a sign and fire fell from heaven like lightning. Even mighty King Ahab had recognized the truth of God. So Elijah has returned to Horeb, the mountain of God, and he wants God to do it again. In verse 10 of chapter 19, Elijah senses that God is speaking to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah responds, "I have been committed, but no one else has. Everyone in Israel went down the wrong path. They killed all your prophets, all the people who spoke your truth. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." Elijah was saying what he believed to be true, only he was wrong. He was wrong at the beginning of chapter 18, and now again at the middle of chapter 19. There's a key lesson here for all of our lives. When we're tired, depressed, alone, sad, or angry, it is easy for us to believe things about ourselves and other people that are simply not true. In verse 11, God spoke to Elijah and said, "Go out and stand on the mountain, for I am going to pass by." I wonder what Elijah thought he would see, or hear, or experience. He stood there and he waited for a sign, a burning bush, a stone tablet, a lightning strike, or the sound of thunder. Do you remember when Jesus was baptized and some heard a voice from heaven, but others said it thundered? I wonder if God spoke today, what it might sound like. Would I be listening? The text says that Elijah experienced a great powerful wind that shattered the rocks. But the Lord was not in the wind. And then there was a great earthquake that shook the mountain and the ground trembled. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And there was a roaring fire that passed by. But the Lord was not in the fire. And then a gentle whisper. God speaks in ways we won't expect. He could have been in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. He had come in those ways before. But this time, he actually sent a messenger ahead of time to prepare Elijah. He sent sleep so that he would be rested. Psalm 127:2 records that God gives sleep to those he loves. God had sent food so that Elijah could be restored. He allowed him time to travel, to think, to pray, to settle. God was with him at Mount Carmel. He was with him under the broom bush. And he was waiting for Elijah at Mount Horeb. But he was not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the silence and the solitude. Maybe we need to listen to our body so that we can listen to God. God waited until Elijah was ready. Instead of frantically running, he needed to rest, eat, enter into a period of silence. He was still sad. He felt like he was the victim, the persecuted, the misunderstood one. God allowed him to continue to think that way. That was Elijah's choice. But God was willing to show him his truth. The truth that God speaks and works in unexpected ways. God is working all around us. As Jesus said in Luke chapter 17, verse 21, that we're studying in our Monday groups, the kingdom of God is right among you. God has a purpose for our lives if we will learn to look for it and follow his guidance in our lives. The closing verses of 1 Kings chapter 19 tell of God's guidance for Elijah. He had just finished an absolutely epic experience on Mount Carmel that would be told to all future generations. But his most important work, his life legacy, was only just beginning. Enjoy the story as you read it to yourself later, and allow yourself to wonder, how might God be guiding me through my life's struggles and surprises? God bless you as you read and study his word.